Could you introduce yourself and tell us about your current ministry?
My name is Father Theodore Foley. I'm the parish rector of the St. Elizabeth the New Martyr Mission in Cullman, Alabama. I graduated from Holy Trinity Seminary in June 2024 from the Master's in Divinity program.
When were you ordained? You were ordained at some point during your seminary journey.
Yes.
How did that come about?
I was ordained on the third and final year of my seminary journey, and essentially the summer before, I was visiting here my beloved St. Mary of Egypt, my home parish, and my spiritual father, Archimandrite John, as soon as I came into the parish, he pulled me aside into his office and he said, "Now is the time, my son. We have to talk to Valdeka Luke." So I couldn't eat for about a week. On September the 10th, I was ordained to the diaconate in the St. Joe Bachayev Church, the lower church of Holy Trinity Monastery, and October the 11th to the priesthood. And from there I began to serve my 40 days.
If I remember correctly, your priesthood was on a rather auspicious church feast.
Yes. Yeah, it was auspicious in two ways, actually, because not only was it the commemoration of the Fathers of the Kievan Caves, which is, of course, very important to us in the Russian Church abroad, but also the finding the relics of St. Elizabeth the New Martyr, who's I'm the rector of one of her parishes. So it's, there's absolutely no coincidences in our faith. And it was just one of those things, completely unplanned. I opened the Orthodox calendar app the day of, and that came to fruition. So thank God, and through her prayers, thank God.
Before you came to seminary, what did your life kind of look like? Before you were considering taking this path, what led you to it?
Yeah, I don't know. I want to scandalize anyone. I'm just kidding. But so I was in the Navy for some time, a reservist, but I was an active duty reservist. And IT, just a nerdy guy, didn't do anything really cool. But it was in the military. I was very much a patriot. That was sort of how I viewed the world, because I was very much an atheist. I joked that my father is a Catholic, my mother's a Methodist, so as a concession, we never went to church. My life was very structured before seminary, and as you see in the infamous Forged in Fire, the documentary of Holy Trinity Seminary, it's spiritual boot camp. Well, a lot of people poke fun of that, but it really is. It was like a spiritual boot camp, and for me, it was refreshing to be told what to do, how to do it. That's how I operate, without having to think too much for myself. So I found it in that aspect to be quite easy to ease into. Of course, there are many aspects of seminary that are you can never prepare for, but I enjoyed it right off the bat, thank God.
Typical day, if there is such a thing. What was that like?
Typical day as a Jordanville seminarian, again, well, like you said, typical day, is there one? There is. It involves a lot of orderly, hopefully heavenly chaos. But I guess I have two sort of modes. It was before I was ordained and then after I was ordained. Before I was ordained, wake up, go to church. For me, I had the obedience of being the chicken guy, which brought me no small amount of joy. I love those birds to death, collecting all the eggs and feeding people. Then, of course, going to breakfast, and then starting the day going to class and really being challenged. Jordanville is one of the last places where you can be academically challenged, where you have classical education done in a spiritual, God-bearing manner. So anyway, go through the classes, go through my day, and at that point, go home, read, and of course, we were always very brotherly, especially at what we called the Master's Convent. It used to be a convent of nuns that lived there. They moved down the street, and we had sort of like a Russian village where the houses right next to each other. You walk up, knock on the door, hey, we're you want to take a break from studying and just kind of have some fellowship and hang out. There was a lot of brotherhood, and I look back on those years probably as really one of the best years of my life. I really miss those times. And then, of course, when I was ordained, still the sort of same thing. I had to let the mantle of being the chicken man go, the chicken king. But thank God, taking up the priesthood, such a joy to get up at 3 a.m. to be commemorating people for so long. Your back starts to ache, and then to start your day at 7 a.m. having communed and served before the holy altar, having communed with the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ, and then going through that whole regular routine I just went over, but as with that obedience, it was a great joy to me. And I think many priests will say that those 40 days were just, you're flying. That was my experience as well.
So that was really profound for you, being able to be ordained while you're a student.
Yes.
You gained a lot from that.
Yeah.
Really, and that was.
Yes.
I think that it sounds like that was a very powerful part of your experience
Yes.
as a student. Is there anything else you could tell us about that?
Yes, I think many people say this, especially Father Serge Lukianov once pointed it out to us, often points it out to us seminarians, that you can tell who's a Jordanville priest. They have a certain flavor about them. They have a certain reverence. And of course, not to put down those priests who have not been to seminary, not by any means, no. But being sort of given birth to as a priest at Jordanville, you're taking on this mantle of these beautiful traditions that our fathers from the St. Joe Pachaya Brotherhood from Holy Russia have passed on to us. And there's a beautiful thing in that when me, just some Irish American schmuck, gets to carry on that tradition. And so being a Jordanville seminarian, being ordained there, you learn how to be really reverential, really respectful, to really serve the liturgy beautifully, both externally and if you will it, if you want to struggle for it, also internally.
You mentioned a second ago about Jordanville being one of the last places where you can have proper, true academic classical training.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about the coursework?
Yeah.
And how that impacted how you thought, how it challenged you, how it sort of formed you?
Well, I would say I before Jordanville, I kind of ascribed to the idea that because our church is not, because as Orthodox Christians, we don't put the mind above the heart, but rather it's the heart, or the mind that is subject to the heart, that means that academics is really entirely secondary. I was under that sort of, you could call it, I guess, a delusion in a sort of way. But at Jordanville, I learned that there is a healthy balance. There's a healthy balance. Take, for example, St. Raphael Brooklyn, who studied at the Halki Island Seminary, where he was brilliant. He was brilliant. But he was, living like an earthly angel, a heavenly man. And Jordanville gives you the opportunity to be that, if you will it, to have that academic acumen, that academic prowess, and all that rational brain knowledge that's so important for a priest, and to wield it properly. Because we're not just trying to puff ourselves up. We're learning so we can fill ourselves, so we can pour it into others. But anyway, specifically speaking of the coursework, it's demanding. It really is. It's demanding. It can be challenging. It's more than I ever had to do. I mean, it really challenged me. Sitting down to do several papers by the end of a semester, my wife knew I went into my study. Don't, unless it's like loss of eye, limb, or other type of emergency, don't please respectfully don't bother me, because I'm in the ringer now with the Holy Father, or trying to argue against some arch heretic in history. And so it's challenging. It's the spiritual challenge that Jordanville brings, but it's the academic as well. And that's what I love about Jordanville.
Did your understanding of the priesthood change or evolve during your time?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, when you come into the church, you're tempted to have this kind of like Superman idea of a priest. You look up to the priest you first meet, generally speaking, and you have sort of those rose-tinted goggles. Not to say that you should be a cynic by any means, no. But, I mean, me being ordained at seminary, it teaches you that being a priest is, as Father George Caltru said, and I'll just say, I'll just quote him and I'll leave it at that because I can't provide a good answer, is what he said. The priesthood is bearing your own cross to the point that you can't even imagine your own cross as a priest is just crushing you, and then you're dragging yourself to church. You go to the confessional corner and people are throwing their other crosses on top of you, and you have to bear with love. You have to bear with humility. One of the ways a priest is saved is forgetting about your own cross and bearing the crosses of others.
So how did it come about that you're serving at your current mission parish?
I was sent to Jordanville to be a priest here, an assistant priest here in St. Mary's. I mean we're huge here. We rival other big cathedrals in ROCOR in America in terms of numbers. So it was definitely needed. And so I was very diligently trying to recruit my friends to go to St. Elizabeth's in Cullman, because I just thought, you know what, if I'm going to be ordained, it's going to be here. And so providentially it happened that I went to friend X, friend Y, friend Z. Just for whatever reason, it didn't appeal to them, or they weren't in a position where they didn't know they were going to get ordained. And finally I thought, I'm kind of tired of suburban living. I love living in the country now, having been in Jordanville for such a long time. If I'm going to be ordained, why don't I just go? Selfish thought. And I talked about it with Father John, and he said yes. I talked about it with Simeon, my lay leader, who's my right-hand man, I love very dearly, and he was overjoyed. And so right after seminary, the week after graduation, I was there. I was served my first vigil and liturgy with Father John and Father Elias too, from St. Martin of Tours in Montgomery. And thank God, it's been very humble parish, very, very sweet, very kind people, and I totally don't deserve them. So thank God.
What are some challenges that have come with jumping right into a new mission?
Well, it come from myself, I think. It's humility, realizing when you're in that position of leadership, all eyes are on you. You have to be that example in and out of all seasons. So that humility, I think in my case, I've had to ask forgiveness of the whole parish probably about 3 times now. They can count for me later, but so my own self, dealing with my own pride, but thank God, and probably just being in sort of a vacuum. I always have the help of the fathers here in St. Mary's, and I can always ring up Bishop Luke in Jordanville and other people. But just being the only parish within an hour just drive of any other Orthodox church, and having to deal with all of these things that seminary cannot prepare you for.
What about some of the joys?
Joys? I think the greatest joys are when you do a Malebin. You do a Malebin for someone, forgive me, for something, whatever it may be, and you see someone for the first time in months in church. The greatest joys are when someone comes to confession and they've been dealing with something, forgive me, and by God's grace and their humility and their struggle, they've made such progress, and they understand that too. They understand that it's not them. It is their effort. It's their humility, but the power that comes from having victory over whatever they're dealing with is from God. Your joys as a priest absolutely have to be about other people, and I forget who said it. I think Metropolitan Anthony Krepavitsky in his confession article booklet says that there's basically no way. You have to be really hard of heart to stand in front of people when they confess to you, and not just you can be cut down to the heart by just how humble, how simple people are in front of you, especially if you're, some 30-year-old schmuck who just got hands laid on, and you have people twice your age confessing to you. Those are the joys of being a priest, are other people, seeing God, the Mother of God, and the saints act through them.
Maybe it's a general question, but looking back on your seminary formation, how do you feel like it prepared you for the realities of parish ministry?
Yeah, even though I just said earlier, there are things that seminary can't prepare you for. Absolutely, there's things that aren't written down in a book anywhere. The spiritual formation, absolutely, is what's going to help you. Having a prayer rule and having faith in God, in the answer, in the love of the saints, especially the Mother of God, and having some kind of experience through praying to them, through asking them for help, that they're looking out for you, they're helping you. Not that we should be looking for signs and going off to possible pre-lesson delusions, but to have an experience of God's mercy, God's forgiveness, and the love and protection of the saints, and all other aspects of spiritual life that come from a spiritual boot camp like Jordanville. If it's a boot camp, it's meant to be a controlled, safe environment before you get thrown out into the trenches. Here's your rifle. Here's how you use it. Here's your helmet. This is what Jordanville does for you. Here's your prayer rope. Here's the gospel. Here's the mysteries of our church. Here's spiritual brotherhood.
What would you tell somebody that is interested in going to Holy Trinity Seminary, or is for sure going to seminary?
Yeah, that's a good question. To lean again into the sort of spiritual boot camp analogy, when people, just a fact of life, when people showed up to boot camp and they were, out of shape, severely obese, didn't really do that well. They had this concept that they're going to really get ran down and get slim and like fit in the span of 3 months. Well, maybe, probably not likely. The same, I think, would go for Jordanville or any seminary for that matter. If you want to get the most out of Jordanville, have a spiritual life before you go to Jordanville. Do not go to Jordanville to start your spiritual life, or any seminary for that matter. Do not go to because you think that's totally wrong attitude. You have to start out from a point where you're doing whatever your spiritual father blesses consistently, your prayer rule, where you have experienced spiritual struggle. Because if you, let me put it this way, my spiritual father told me once, the devil tries to destroy everybody and drag them down to hell. For seminarians, because you're trying to become a priest, maybe, or maybe you're not, but maybe God's trying to make you a priest. The devil tries to destroy you before he thinks he can get you into hell. And of course, the witness of our church, a pious layman might have 2 to 3 demons on him. A priest has 1,000. So know that. And if I could add on this, something my wife's confessor, former spiritual father rather, Father Ambrose Arrington, very great priest out there in Oklahoma, told me, you come out of seminary either in 2 ways. There's no in between. You come out of it a little more humble, ready to serve God and the church in some capacity, or you go into it unprepared or with the wrong idea, you come out of it completely worldly and totally bitter against the church. So had to be prepared, had to be ready for that. And if you're ready for that, then God will help you.
What's going on with your parish now?
Okay.
What does the future look like for St. Elizabeth's in Cullman?
Yeah. So St. Elizabeth in Cullman, Alabama, thank God, we have big aspirations, and we hope that God is blessing those aspirations. We have a fundraiser going on right now. Our overarching plan is to, God willing, have some land no more than 10 to 15 minutes outside of the center of Cullman, in a sort of rural spot, with a God willing someday, no matter how many millions of dollars, no matter how many years it takes, to have a traditionally built Orthodox church. Everyone is saying this, that Orthodoxy is on the upsurge in America, more than it's ever been. So I think now, if we're starting missions now at this point, we shouldn't settle for buying Protestant churches, and that's fine. I mean, how could I put down churches that are in Protestant churches? My home parish, which I love to death, is in a former Lutheran church. But I think we should make that effort to go the extra mile and have traditionally built Orthodox churches. In any case, right now we're in the process of moving to our first ever sort of official out in town public space, a former Protestant church that we're getting a really, thank God, through the prayers of St. Elizabeth, the Mother of God, and through God's mercy, we're getting a really nice deal on a temporary lease on a nice whitewash former Protestant Baptist church. And so, God willing, that will make us more appealing to people. It'll show people, hey, we're here, we're an official, church organization, and we're not just like crazy Russians or whatever people might think. So thank God we've experienced a lot of growth, basically almost with little to do on our part. Not to say that we're not trying to evangelize, but we do so little because of our size, and yet we get so many people who are interested. So thank God, through God's help, if people would like to donate, to support, they can look us up, St. Elizabeth the New Martyr in Cullman, Alabama. They can find our Give Butter, which maybe we'll link in this video. And if they would like, they can donate to us. And please, if you donate, please send me through email or through the Give Butter list a list of a few names of people who are living, especially those who are reposed Orthodox baptized Christians, so we can include them at the Cross Committee as a thank you to you, because that's very important. Thank God.